Howdy, y'all. It's a Maddie. I am back. I am back after a little bit of a hiatus there. A little bit of a 2 year hiatus there. But yeah, we're back. Life happened. Okay. We don't need to get into it. But I'd like to do something a little fun for Augtober to relaunch the channel. And I'd love to do a little reading scary Reddit stories. So let's do some little spooky story times. This is reading scary Reddit stories, and this one comes from r/let's not meet. And this was posted by T_Roby. And this was posted 3 days ago. I have not read it before, and I am very excited to get into it. So, without further ado, let's get into this first Reddit story. This one's called The Old Man on the Beach. So, this story took place when I, currently 22 male, was only 16. It's important for this story to note that I looked like a very young 16-year-old. I'm kind of short. At this point, I've got no whisper of facial hair on my face, and I have a very young-looking face and body overall. I live in France, in the Paris suburbs, but every year it was kind of a ritual for me and my grandparents to go on vacation in Brittany during summer near the coast, every time a different location. It's also important to point out that my grandparents were already pretty old at this point, so I was used to doing things like hiking or going to the beach alone when it was too far away, as I didn't want them to be exhausted all the time. So this time we were staying in a little holiday resort near the sea, so my grandparents could easily go to the beach if they wanted, while I was swimming or going on adventures alone. From the first day, I got myself really interested in a small island that you could see from the beach, and I talked to some locals about it. They told me how beautiful it was, and that you could take a ferry to go there, but just a small portion of the island was authorized, and there was even a whole beach that was not visible from the coast that was in that forbidden area. When I asked them about it, they said that the police technically forbids people to go to the part of the island that's not visible from the coast, as to go there to this side of the island, you either have to swim in deep water or climb rocks. There also are no roads or police cars to drive on to this side of the island, so if you have a problem, they can't really get to you as quickly. But they also told me that many people don't care and go to this side even if it's forbidden, because the beach there is bigger and there are fewer people. From there, that was it from my 16-year-old self. I wanted to go to that island. So the next morning, I told my grandparents about it. They first said no because they were afraid I couldn't make it before the last ferry, but I reassured them that I would do my best to take the second to last ferry, so if I missed it, I would just have to wait for the last one. They then said yes. So, after a morning exploring the town with my grandparents, I finally got on the ferry and arrived at the island around 4 p.m. The last ferry to get back to the coast was around 7:30 p.m. I immediately searched for the first beach, the legal one, from which you could climb or swim to the other one. And there I was, climbing barefoot on sharp-edged, burning stones on a hot day. The first thing I figured is that, contrary to what I was told, the water wasn't deep at all. In fact, I just chose to climb because I was dumb and irresponsible, but if I chose to walk around the island in the water, I could have. I'm kind of short for a guy, and the water would have just got to half my torso. The second thing is that there sometimes were micro beaches, fragmenting the climbing wall. Not big at all, just a couple square meters, but enough to stop the climbing for 3 or 4 seconds and set foot to the ground before returning and climbing. And the last micro beach, which was actually midway to the forbidden beach, was bigger than the others and had some sort of little cave. Not really deep, maybe 3 meters down, but just enough so you don't see much of the texture of the walls because of the darkness, if that makes sense. I arrived at the forbidden beach, and as I was told, there were not many people, mostly teenagers and groups of friends and couples in their 20s, lying next to each other on beach towels. I stayed there for about 45 minutes swimming and laying in the sand doing whatever when I saw an old man who seemed to suffer from severe back pain, considering his slowness, arched posture, and hands placed on his lower back. I naturally said hi to him as he walked past me and smiled and didn't really think about it because it was natural for me to say hi to an old man who seemed to be in pain. He nodded like a nice grandpa and continued walking. Then I gathered my stuff from the beach and prepared myself to leave when I noticed he stared at me from a distance and seemed to try to gauge if I came with friends or not. He saw I noticed him and strangely smiled, and I said hi to him again, trying to make the situation less awkward and move on. From there, the real nightmare begins. I start climbing back to the rocks, heading to the legal beach. At first, all seems normal, but after like 5 minutes of climbing, I notice some noise behind me, little rocks dropping in the water below and faint breathing. So I look back and see nothing at first, but as I stay still, I see him. The old man climbing behind me from a 5-meter distance. I completely froze, surprised to see him here, and I say, "Hi," again. I know that's kind of ridiculous at this point, but I've always been such an introvert. I don't know what to say, lol. But this time, he responds something that could translate as, "Oh, you're such a polite little boy, aren't you?" And he smiles at me with the strangest smile I've seen from an old man. And then I go back to climbing faster, not saying anything, and not realizing at first what's happening when I remember. Wasn't this old creep arching his back like crazy just 10 minutes ago? And also, to go to the forbidden beach in the first place, you either have to climb rocks or walk in relatively deep water. That's why there were only young people on that beach. How would an old man in pain even be here? As I realize that, I notice he's getting closer, so I accelerate even more. After some time, I see him climbing down, so I figure it's too much for his old body and kind of get relieved. But then I notice him placing himself right below me in the water, trying to grab my feet to pull me down with him. Oh, oh. No. Mind you, all the time I'm too stunned to move, seeing this man in his 60s trying to pull me down to his level in the water to do God knows what with me. It's when I began climbing again, after what seemed like an eternity, shaking, that I noticed him stopping to try to grab my feet and just follow me with open arms in my direction, seemingly hoping that I would fall off the wall into his arms. What? Then I start climbing again, trying to ignore what's happening below me, and I don't exactly know when, but I stop seeing him, and I get really scared that he might have climbed back to get me. And at the same time, I notice I'm near the micro beach with a tiny cave, and I'll soon have to get to the ground to start climbing forward. So I go to the edge before descending to the ground. It was not really an edge, but more of a really gradual slope, to be honest. And something feels off. There is something in the cave. It's him. He has thrown away his clothes, and he looks directly at me, smiling, completely naked, telling... Oh my God. He has thrown away his clothes, and he looks directly at me, smiling, completely naked, telling me with his hands to come to him. At this point, I'm really fucking scared. He may be old, but he's taller than me. I'm weak AF, and I don't know what to do because my only way forward is there, and I'm terrified of missing my ferry back to the coast and to my grandparents and having to sleep on that island where I have no money for the only little hotel I've seen and where I know nobody. So I decide to go back as fast as I can to find anybody, really. He tries to follow me back on the rocks, at first saying shit like, "Come on, little one, come to me." but I'm going really fast. And after 30 seconds or so, I don't hear him anymore. So it means either he has another plan or he gave up chasing me. Now I'm back on the forbidden beach. I find a random couple and explain the situation and ask if I can stay with them because I don't feel safe. They tell me, yes, you can stay if you want, but we won't pretend we're your parents or help you find a house to sleep in, though. They don't even seem to believe me at this point, but I don't care. I ask them if they're going to take the ferry too. They tell me that they're basically from there, and I never talk to them again. I just follow them in silence to the ferry and finally get the last one. When I go back to the resort, I didn't tell my grandparents right away. Instead, I called my friends on a group chat, laughing it off and minimizing the incident as if it were just a funny, weird story. But I can tell by their reaction that it clearly was not just a funny story, and that something horrible could have happened to me. And just then I realized how truly terrified of this situation I was. Now everybody in my family kind of knows that story, and sadly, I've come to realize that almost everyone I know has a creepy story like this, yep, to some extent, which I find really sad and upsetting. But yeah, that was the story of when I met this old man at the beach in Brittany, and to that old creep, I say, let's never, ever meet again. Ooh, guys, that's crazy. I mean, it's one thing to be a creepy old man, but it's another to pretend that you're like decrepit and can't walk just to like, suddenly spring back to life to try to chase down this poor child. The fact that he was pulling on his legs, like, come here, like, I'll catch you, and trying to get him to just like fall into his arms, like, oh, just the predatory nature of that is fucking disgusting. And then the clothes off, like, if you couldn't already make your intentions clear enough, that's so, oh, yeah. And that thing he said at the end where he's realizing that almost everyone he knows has a creepy story like that, yeah, I mean, unfortunately, there are just really creepy and predatory people everywhere, and thankfully no one's ever been like fully nude in front of me trying to get me. But yeah, I mean, god, if you've ever been through anything like that, ooh, I am glad you are here with us to tell the tale. Crazy. What a bad vacation. Don't go places by yourself ever. Just don't. Don't ever. Okay, well, let's get into the next one. I'm gonna get into the next story. This one's also from r/Let's Not Meet, and it's posted by La Techie. Okay, this one's also not safe for work, so let's get into it. This one's called In the Basement of the Moose Lodge. I grew up in a small beach resort town. It was remarkable for two things: a large collection of Victorian-era mansions and a tiny year-round population. When the tourists left at the end of the summer, it became a ghost town. Most of the workers and business owners would go somewhere else until early spring. If you stayed, it was because you didn't have options. My family wasn't as well-to-do, so we'd close up most of the hotel and retreat to a few rooms, conserving heat and power until next season. That already sounds scary. That already sounds like The Shining. In 1982, our town was barely holding on. In the summer, we pretty much got overflow from the surrounding beach towns with their newer, better appointed hotels, fancier restaurants, and nicer beaches. There was a national recession, so there weren't as many tourists. Some of those fancy mansions were abandoned or burned down for insurance at the end of the season. I had a small group of friends in junior high. We were into role-playing games, sci-fi, and fantasy. Teofilo and I were the only members of the group not named Brian or Matt. Two of each. Okay, so there's OP, Teofilo, That's a really cool name. Brian, Matt, and Matt. We'd play D&D when we could until we got kicked out of that house. When weather permitted, we'd go to the salt marshes or a closed down industrial site and skirmish with handmade wooden melee weapons. I love it. it's so so wholesome. One December evening, we were packing up to leave Brian Two's house when Steve came in the room. Steve was Brian Two's older brother. At the time, we thought he was cool. He had quit school, had a job on a fishing boat, and a car. He also had a real sword, which he claimed was a war trophy from his grandfather. Steve suggested we should go with him to explore the closed-up Moose Lodge, a mansion about a mile from their house. All of us had been on the grounds of the property, since there were paths that led to the salt marshes behind the building. Steve seemed really insistent that we should go visit it that Sunday. A few of us agreed. Steve told us a few times that we should come in from the salt marsh side so that nobody would see us. Sunday came around, and it turned out that everybody had something else to do. I was careful to approach the Moose Lodge from the back. To maintain stealth, I hid in some bushes to scope out the situation. Alright, so OP is just with himself and Steve at this point, it sounds like. Brian Two's older brother. And they're going to explore the Moose Lodge. Oh boy. Behind that building was an open big backyard, big enough to park a few cars. There was a red Mercedes diesel sedan with 2 occupants. Steve was in the passenger seat, and an older man wearing a cap was in the driver's seat. Who is this? I remember walking out of the bushes. Steve got out of the car and greeted me, putting his finger to his lips to tell me I should be quiet. Steve was very animated, telling me how neat the basement was and how great it would be to play games. I was peering down into the basement when I heard the man get out of the car and walk up behind me without slowing. I remember that sound, the look in the man's eyes, and the sound of Steve chattering. I felt a wave of fear hit me and I ran. I didn't know what I was afraid of, but I felt it nonetheless. I booked it back home and never mentioned it to anyone. I never went back to Brian Two's house. By the next year, Brian Two had discovered other hobbies. The rest of us stuck together until college and drifted apart. I have seen the look in that man's eyes again. In law school, I interned with criminal defense lawyers, and some of those cases were for men accused of child molestation. A few of them had that same expression for a fleeting moment. But I saw it just the same. Ooh, my geese are bumping, y'all. My geese are bumping. Oh my gosh. That's so scary. That's so scary. What the fuck? Steve. Now I had to go back because it said something about, I remember that sound. So the sound of the man getting out of the car and walking up behind him without slowing. I remember that sound, the look in the man's eyes, and the sound of Steve chattering. Chattering like his teeth were chattering, like Steve was scared too. Like something was going to happen to Steve or what? I don't know, let me know. Let me know your thoughts in the comments because I mean, nothing good was about to happen there. We know that. We know that. Insane. Spooky. That was a shorter one. God, I hope none of this ever happens to anybody ever. But how crazy that OP grew up, went to law school, and saw this same, this predatory, probably kind of like hungry look in the eyes of that older man, in the eyes of creepers, PDF files, if you know what I'm talking about. Hate that. Thank you so much for sharing your story, though, Law Techie. Let's go to the next one. Let's do it. Last one. Let's jump right in. All right, this is our last story for this video, and this one seems like it's gonna be heavy and pretty tragic. So hold on to your pants, hold on to your boots, girl, if you got them. Also, it's like 90 degrees outside, and I am breaking a bit of a sweat. So, not that this is gonna help, but this one is called "I Got Kidnapped for a Week After Being Drugged at a Party," and it's posted by the glowing Emily, again on r/let's not meet. TLDR, basically, I got kidnapped and held against my will for a week or so. Huh, the fuck? Whoa. Okay. This happened when I was 16. I'm 19 now, female for what it's worth. I went to a party that some of the older kids from my school were going to. The only reason I went was that I thought it would make me look cool if everyone knew I went to this more adult party. It was the summer, so it's not like I had to worry about school anyway. This one guy started talking to me and showed me where all the alcohol was so I could get a drink. He said his name was Jason and he was 25. When I told him that I was 16, he said I looked older than that. Red flags. Wee. Bad. Already hate that. Already hate that a lot for you. Then my fatal mistake. I had to go to the bathroom, so I asked this guy to hold my drink for me. When I got out, he gave me my drink back, and like an idiot, I finished it real quick. He made me another drink and then followed me around as I made my way through the party. Oh, I hate this. I don't know if it was just a few minutes or more like 10, 15, but I started to feel really sick and dizzy very suddenly. Jason said I should go outside for some fresh air, so I followed him outside. It was honestly hard to think straight, but the rest is kind of a blur. I vaguely remember getting into a car and bits and pieces of the drive, but then I passed out. I woke up in a bed, in a room all alone. I still felt pretty woozy, so I just kind of laid there, wondering how I got home, or if I was even at home at all. When I realized I was not in my own bed, I sat up and realized I wasn't even wearing my own clothes. I was wearing some kind of matching pajama set. The worst part about that is that I wasn't even wearing underwear, which I later learned meant that this creep took all my clothes off to dress me in this weird pajama outfit. Oh, fuck. No. Guess I'm sweating. Thankfully, in that moment, I didn't connect those dots, but it wouldn't matter for too long, because eventually Jason came into the room to bring me breakfast. I can only imagine he thought he was being unbelievably generous to bring me coffee and 2 toasted waffles. I'm not going to go over a detailed retelling of the entire week. Every day was pretty much the same, but quite honestly, I just don't want to. Basically, for an entire week, he made me act like a living doll in his house. He watched me eat, changed my clothes to the outfits he picked out, even using the bathrooms. He always put drugs like ecstasy in my drinks, or somehow to keep me in a positive attitude. It didn't really work, though, except for a few hours a day when the drug took effect. And then, for seemingly no reason that I can conceive of, he brought me out to his car, put a cloth bag or something over my head, and drove me to some place to drop me off. When I got out of his car, he sped away, and I never saw him again. Eventually, I was walking along the side of the road and just collapsed from fatigue. I didn't pass out, I just couldn't keep going. Apparently, someone saw me fall down and called the police, who then found me and brought me to the hospital. Well, the ambulance brought me there, and the police joined me to ask what the heck was going on. They knew I was missing, and they pretty quickly figured out who I was, so they were able to call my parents. The next thing I know, my whole family is there to see me, and praise the Lord that I was alive. I did my best to identify the guy who kidnapped me, and there was a pretty thorough investigation as far as I know, but they never found the guy. He was a total ghost. The police questioned nearly everyone who was at the party, and learned the name of the guy who was probably the one to kidnap me, but it wasn't a real name. The phone number anyone had for him was disconnected and only attached to a burner phone anyway. So yeah, they never caught the guy. Fuck. It was easily the most traumatic thing to ever happen to me, and I hope it stays that way. But despite that, I know it could have been so much worse. I don't know why he never hurt me or assaulted me, but I'm thankful he didn't. I know so many kidnapping victims are treated so much worse than I was. Girl. And that's how it ends. Oh my god. I'm actually fucking sweating. Um, wow. Yeah, I mean, she acknowledged it in this story, but never, ever go to a party by yourself. Never go to a party with much older people than you. Never accept drinks from people you don't know or have people hold or watch your drinks from people you don't know. I Yeah, I mean, the fact that he like treated her like a living doll, like that's just eerie. I mean, imagine the fucking panic waking up after being drugged, not in your own clothes, but in like a pajama set and no underwear. And oh, that makes me sick. That makes me sick to think about. Um, insane. The fact that he let you go, that's a miracle. That is truly a miracle. I don't know how she got through that. Um, she's so lucky to be alive. I mean, and like she's minimizing it by saying it could have been so much worse. Like, yes, but also that is such a horrific thing to do to somebody. Um, yeah, you really can't trust people, especially people you don't know. And any 25-year-old guy who's wanting anything to do with a 16-year-old is going to have nefarious motives. So wow. Holy shit. I'm pissed that they never got the guy. That sucks. I'm so angry. I mean, God, I'm just glad that she got out of there. That's so crazy. Glowing Emily, whoever you are. Whew. You're a trooper, girl. You are a trooper. Yeah. I hope somebody finds him before he strikes again. But, whew. Oh my gosh. You guys, that was crazy. That was a lot. I'm sweating. I have to go about my day now like a normal human being. But yeah, that was also kind of fun. I'm all spooked out. I'm all spooked out. My shivers have been timbered. If you liked hearing the Reddit stories and kind of are interested in hearing more of that, I love reading them, so I'm down. Yeah, let me know what kind of stories you want to hear and leave me your thoughts in the comments. Have a beautiful day and don't interact with strangers. Just don't do it. Just don't do it. Okay, love you. Bye.